They mocked her, bound her to a post for laughs. But the moment her billionaire husband stormed in, the joke ended, and payback began. Rachel was 7 years old when the police officers came to her door. They spoke in hushed tones to her babysitter while Rachel sat in her wheelchair, clutching the stuffed elephant her father had won for her at the county fair just the week before. That elephant, she named him Elmer, would become her only remaining connection to the parents who had cherished her. There was an accident, the female officer had explained, kneeling to Rachel's level. Your mommy and daddy, they're not coming home. Rachel didn't cry, not then. The tears would come later, in the sterile room of Child Protective Services, where her small hands created what the social worker called remarkably expressive drawings. Art became her voice when words failed, her escape when reality became too painful. When the Evans family appeared 3 weeks later, Rachel had initially felt hope. Elizabeth Evans, with her tailored suit and pearl earrings, had smiled tightly at Rachel across the desk. She's a distant cousin of my husband's, Elizabeth explained to the social worker, her voice carrying the crisp authority of old money. It would be a shame for her to be lost in the system when she has family who can provide. What Elizabeth didn't say, what Rachel would learn through overheard conversations and whispered asides, was that adopting a child with a disability made for excellent press coverage for the Evans Family Foundation. Rachel was not a child to them but a prop, a demonstration of charitable goodwill that could be displayed at functions and then tucked away. The Evans mansion on Hillcrest Drive became Rachel's new home, though home was never the right word for it. Her bedroom was on the first floor, separated from the family's rooms upstairs, ostensibly for her convenience, but effectively isolating her from family life. The mansion had an elevator, but it was rarely operational when Rachel needed it. We don't want you to strain yourself, dear, Elizabeth would say whenever Rachel expressed interest in family activities. Why don't you stay here and draw? You seem to enjoy that. And so Rachel drew. She drew the family that had taken her in but never truly seen her. She drew the parents she'd lost, keeping their faces alive in her memory. She drew the bustling world outside the mansion windows, a world that seemed forever just beyond her reach. At school, the isolation continued. The Evans name ensured Rachel attended the most prestigious private academy in the city, but Elizabeth made it clear to the headmaster that Rachel's condition required special accommodation. This accommodation often meant exclusion from field trips, sports events, and social gatherings. "It's for your own good," became the refrain that Rachel grew to despise. By 16, Rachel had developed a quiet defiance. Her art teacher, Ms. Winters, was the first adult since her parents' death to recognize her talent as more than a nice hobby. "This isn't just good, Rachel," Ms. Winters had said, examining Rachel's landscape painting. "This is exceptional. You have a gift for capturing emotion through color and light." Ms. Winters became Rachel's champion, submitting her work to student competitions without the Evans' knowledge. When Rachel won first place in a statewide contest, the trophy arrived at the Evans home in a large package. "What's this?" Harold Evans, her adoptive father, had asked at dinner, examining the unopened box with suspicion. "It's probably just art supplies I ordered," Rachel had answered, her heart pounding. She'd learned long ago that achievements that drew attention to her were not celebrated in this household. That night, alone in her room, Rachel had removed the trophy from its box, tracing the golden figure with her fingertips. She'd hidden it beneath her bed, along with her growing collection of awards and recognition, her secret evidence that she was more than the Evans family believed her to be. As Rachel entered early adulthood, she found ways to escape the mansion's stifling atmosphere. She'd taken to visiting the public library, where the kind librarian, Mrs. Chen, never treated her wheelchair as an inconvenience. It was Mrs. Chen who told her about the special arts program at the community college. "They offer scholarships," Mrs. Prossen Chen had mentioned casually one day. "The deadline is next Friday." Rachel applied in secret, using Mrs. Chen's address for correspondence. When the acceptance letter arrived, along with a full scholarship offer, Rachel made her first major stand against the Evans family control. "I'm enrolling in art classes at the community college," she announced at breakfast one morning. "Classes start next week." Elizabeth's coffee cup froze midway to her lips. "Don't be ridiculous, Rachel. You know we've arranged for you to take online courses from home. It's much more suitable for your situation." "My situation doesn't prevent me from attending college like anyone else," Rachel had replied, her voice calm but firm. "I've already accepted the scholarship." Harold lowered his newspaper, his expression a mix of annoyance and surprise. "How do you propose to get there? Who will assist you?" "I've researched the accessible transit routes, and I don't need assistance. I'm perfectly capable of navigating campus." The argument that followed was cold and cutting, but Rachel held her ground. For the first time, the Evans family realized that their quiet, compliant ward had developed a will of her own. They reluctantly conceded, though Elizabeth made her displeasure known through 1,000 small cuts, forgotten lunches, accidentally double-booked accessible transportation, constant phone calls under the guise of checking in. At college, Rachel blossomed. Her professors recognized her exceptional talent, and fellow students saw beyond her wheelchair to the artist within. She specialized in large-scale murals that required both technical skill and physical endurance, a deliberate choice that challenged perceptions about her capabilities. By 25, Rachel had established herself as an up-and-coming artist in local circles. She rented a small studio apartment near campus, returning to the Evans mansion only for obligatory holiday gatherings and the annual family reunion, events where her absence would have generated gossip in their social circle. It was at a gallery exhibition featuring her work that Rachel first encountered Marcus Lee. She had created a series called Invisible Bodies, featuring people with various disabilities depicted in vibrant colors against backgrounds where architectural barriers faded into shadow. Marcus had stood before her largest piece, a wheelchair user ascending a staircase transformed into a flowing river, for nearly 20 minutes. "You've captured it perfectly," he said when Rachel approached, unaware she was the artist. "The way the world is designed to make certain bodies disappear." Rachel, unused to having her artistic intentions so precisely understood, had tilted her head. "You sound like you speak from experience." Marcus smiled, a warm, genuine expression that reached his eyes. "Not personally, no. But I grew up in Westside Housing Project. My mother cleaned office buildings at night, and I'd go with her because we couldn't afford childcare. I spent my childhood being instructed to make myself invisible while the important people conducted business." There was something about his straightforward manner that put Rachel at ease. He wore a simple button-down shirt and jeans that looked expensive but not ostentatious. Nothing about him screamed wealth or power. "I'm Rachel," she said, offering her hand. "And that's my painting you've been analyzing." His eyes widened slightly. "I'm Marcus, and I'd like to purchase it, if it's for sale." Their conversation had flowed effortlessly that evening, continuing over coffee at the small cafe next door. Marcus spoke about his tech company that developed accessibility software, explaining how his childhood experiences had shaped his commitment to creating inclusive technology. "Most designers never consider users whose needs differ from their own," he explained passionately. "We're changing that paradigm, designing from the margins inward rather than from the center out." Rachel found herself sharing stories she rarely told anyone, about her parents' death, her life with the Evans family, her determination to create art that challenged perceptions of disability. "They mean well," she said of the Evans family, though she knew this wasn't entirely true. "They just can't see beyond the wheelchair." Marcus's eyes had held hers steadily. "Their failure to see your value doesn't diminish it, Rachel. It only reveals their limitations." That first meeting extended into dinner, then into weekly coffee dates that evolved into something deeper. Marcus, Rachel discovered, had built his tech company from a dorm room startup into a billion-dollar enterprise, though he lived far more modestly than his wealth would suggest. "Money is just a tool," he told her as they strolled through the botanical gardens on their third date, Rachel's wheelchair gliding smoothly along the accessible paths. "What matters is what you build with it." What Marcus was building was revolutionary: integrated smart home systems that adapted to users' needs, educational software that adjusted to different learning styles, city planning consultancies that reimagined public spaces to be truly accessible to all bodies. Rachel found herself falling in love not just with Marcus's compassion and intellect, but with his vision of a world designed for everyone. When he kissed her for the first time beneath the cherry blossoms in the garden's Japanese section, Rachel felt seen in a way she hadn't since her parents' death. Their courtship progressed with a natural ease. Marcus never treated Rachel's disability as either an inspiration or an inconvenience. It was simply one aspect of the remarkable woman he was growing to love. He asked questions about her needs without presumption and respected her independence without hesitation. 6 months into their relationship, during a weekend trip to the coast, Marcus proposed as they watched the sunset from an oceanfront deck. "You've shown me what true strength looks like," he said, holding a simple diamond ring. "I want to build a life with you, Rachel, a life where we create spaces for everyone to belong." Rachel accepted without hesitation, but as they discussed wedding plans, she made one unusual request. "I don't want the Evans family there." Marcus raised an eyebrow but didn't immediately object. "They've never truly been family to me," Rachel explained. "Our wedding day should be filled with people who love us authentically. And," she hesitated, "I don't want them to know about you, about your success or wealth." "May I ask why?" Marcus inquired gently. Rachel sighed. "For 20 years, they've treated me as a burden, pitied me, dismissed my art as a nice hobby. If they suddenly discover I'm marrying a successful tech entrepreneur, they'll change their behavior. Not because they've recognized their mistake, but because they'll see me as valuable only through my connection to you." Marcus considered this, then nodded. "Our relationship is ours to share or keep private as we choose, but eventually, they'll find out." "Eventually," Rachel agreed, "but not yet. They married in a small, joyful ceremony attended by Rachel's friends from art school, Marcus's mother and sister, and a handful of colleagues who had become like family to them both. The event was held at an accessible botanical garden, with vibrant flowers reflecting Rachel's artistic palette and simple, elegant decor that spoke to Marcus's understated style. After the wedding, they moved into a thoughtfully designed home that seamlessly incorporated accessibility features without making them the focal point. Marcus expanded his business, while Rachel's artistic career flourished. They collaborated on a series of public installations that combined her artistic vision with his technological innovations, interactive murals that responded to touch and sound, making art accessible to people with various abilities. To the Evans family, Rachel revealed nothing of these developments. During obligatory phone calls and rare visits, she spoke vaguely of art projects and teaching opportunities. She wore her wedding ring on a chain beneath her clothing when around them, removing all traces of Marcus from her appearance. "It feels dishonest sometimes," she confessed to Marcus after a particularly strained Christmas dinner at the Evans mansion. "But then Elizabeth makes some condescending remark about how brave I am to keep busy with my little paintings, and I remember why I keep our lives separate." Marcus never pressured her to change this arrangement. "Your boundaries with them are valid," he would reassure her. "You're protecting something precious, your sense of self-worth that exists independently of their recognition." As their third anniversary approached, Marcus's business required him to travel to Tokyo for an important partnership deal. The timing couldn't have been worse. It coincided exactly with the Evans family's annual reunion, an event Rachel attended only to prevent the social fallout that would affect the family's public image if she were absent. "Skip it this year," Marcus suggested as they discussed the conflict over breakfast. "Come to Tokyo with me instead." Rachel sighed, stirring her tea absently. "You know I want to, but Elizabeth has already made it clear that several major donors to the family foundation will be there. My absence would spark questions." "Questions might not be the worst thing," Marcus observed. "Maybe it's time for some honesty about how they treat you." Rachel shook her head. "Not yet. I'm just not ready for that confrontation." Marcus reached across the table, taking her hand. "Then I have a suggestion. Go to the reunion. Fulfill that obligation. I'll try to wrap up the Tokyo meetings early and join you for the final day, the formal dinner. Maybe it's time I meet this family of yours." Rachel hesitated. "Are you sure? It won't be pleasant." Marcus smiled, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "I'm sure. Besides, I've arranged a special anniversary surprise for when I return. Something worth celebrating after you endure the reunion." She raised an eyebrow. "A surprise? What kind of surprise? If I told you, it wouldn't be a surprise," he teased. "Let's just say it involves that empty lot we've had our eye on near the riverfront. The one you said would make a perfect community art space." Rachel's eyes widened. "You didn't. 3 years of marriage deserve something special," Marcus said with a grin. "The paperwork should be finalized while I'm in Tokyo." The joy of this news carried Rachel through the preparations for both Marcus's trip and her dreaded return to the Evans estate. As she packed for the reunion, she felt an unusual sense of anticipation. Perhaps this would be the last time she would have to pretend to be less than she was. Perhaps it was finally time for the Evans family to see the real Rachel, accomplished artist, beloved wife, woman of substance and worth. How wrong she was. The Evans family estate loomed on the hillside, its manicured gardens and Greek revival columns presenting a perfect picture of old-money elegance. Rachel's taxi pulled up to the circular driveway where luxury vehicles were already parked in neat rows. Taking a deep breath, she paid the driver and transferred to her wheelchair with practiced ease. "Would you like help with your bags, ma'am?" the driver asked. "No, thank you. I've got it," Rachel replied, securing her weekend case to the back of her chair. She had long ago learned to pack efficiently, bringing only what she could manage independently. The front steps of the mansion featured no ramp, of course. Rachel made her way around to the side entrance, the service door near the kitchen that had a shallow enough threshold for her to navigate. It was the same path she had taken for 20 years, the architectural equivalent of being asked to use the back door. Inside, the house bustled with activity. Catering staff hurried through the kitchen, preparing for the weekend's elaborate meals. One of the newer kitchen workers, a young woman arranging fruit platters, gave Rachel a confused look. "The service entrance is staff only," she began, then stopped when she noticed Rachel's wheelchair. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't." "It's fine," Rachel assured her with a practiced smile. "I'm Rachel Evans. This is actually my family's home." The woman's embarrassment was evident. "I'm so sorry, Ms. Evans. No one told me." "Rachel, there you are." Elizabeth Evans appeared in the kitchen doorway, her silver blonde hair perfectly coiffed, her linen dress expensive but understated. "I was beginning to think you wouldn't make it." "Hello, Elizabeth," Rachel responded, wheeling forward to accept the air kiss her adoptive mother offered. The accessible transit was running late. "Well, you're here now," Elizabeth said, already turning away. Your usual room is prepared. Davis can help with your bags. She gestured vaguely toward one of the household staff before disappearing back into the main part of the house. Rachel declined Davis's help and made her way to her room, a converted study near the back of the house, far from the family quarters and guest suites upstairs. The room was exactly as she remembered, functionally accessible but sterile, lacking any personal touches. The walls were beige, the bedding plain, the furniture utilitarian. Unlike the rest of the house with its antiques and family heirlooms, this space contained nothing of value or sentiment. After unpacking her few belongings, Rachel took a moment to center herself. From her bag, she removed a small framed photo of herself and Marcus on their wedding day, placing it on the nightstand. She wouldn't leave it out. She'd return it to her bag before anyone could see it. But for now, it reminded her of the life she'd built beyond these walls. 3 days, she whispered to herself. Just get through 3 days. The reunion officially began with afternoon tea in the garden. Rachel made her way outside, navigating the pebbled path with difficulty. The garden had been designed for aesthetic beauty with no consideration for accessibility, another reminder that this space had never been intended to accommodate her. Relatives were already gathered in clusters beneath white canopies. Cousins who had grown up alongside Rachel, aunts and uncles who had attended the same holiday gatherings for years, and various spouses and children filled the space with chatter and laughter. "Look who's here," called Aunt Patricia, Elizabeth's sister, her voice carrying an artificial cheerfulness. "It's our Rachel." Heads turned, and Rachel felt the familiar sensation of being observed rather than welcomed. There was a subtle shift in the atmosphere, a momentary hush followed by slightly too enthusiastic greetings. "Rachel, darling, it's been ages. How are you managing, dear? Still doing your art projects?" Each question carried the weight of unspoken judgment, the barely concealed pity that Rachel had endured throughout her life with the Evans family. She answered politely, deflecting personal inquiries with vague responses, a skill she had perfected over the years. Her cousin Brooke approached, champagne flute in hand. Brooke had been the closest thing to a friend Rachel had in the family during childhood, but that relationship had soured in adolescence when Brooke began to see Rachel as a social liability. "Rachel, you look well," Brooke said, her gaze traveling over Rachel's simple but elegant blouse and trousers. "I'm surprised you're still coming to these gatherings. You always seem to hate them." "Family obligation," Rachel replied with a small smile. "You know how it is." Brooke laughed, the sound brittle. "Of course, though I would have thought you'd have your own life by now. Any special someone? Career developments?" The questions were designed to highlight what Brooke assumed were Rachel's deficiencies, her presumed loneliness, her imagined lack of accomplishment. Rachel could have answered truthfully. She could have mentioned her successful gallery exhibitions, her commissioned murals in public buildings, her marriage to a brilliant and loving man. Instead, she shrugged slightly. "I keep busy. My art keeps me fulfilled." Brooke's smile didn't reach her eyes. "How nice for you. Well, I should mingle. Bradley just made partner at his law firm, and everyone's eager to hear about it." As Brooke moved away, Rachel caught Elizabeth watching the interaction from across the lawn, her expression unreadable. Throughout the afternoon, Rachel observed the family dynamics with the detached interest of an anthropologist. The status competitions, the subtle boasting, the careful maintenance of the Evans family image. It all seemed so transparent now, so hollow compared to the authentic life she shared with Marcus. Dinner that evening was served in the formal dining room, the long mahogany table set with the family's heirloom china and silver. Rachel noted with grim amusement that no place setting had been arranged at a height accessible from her wheelchair. Instead, a separate smaller table had been placed in the corner, ostensibly for her comfort, but effectively segregating her from the family gathering. "We thought you'd be more comfortable with your own space," Elizabeth explained when Rachel wheeled up to the main table. "You know how crowded it gets." "I'd prefer to join everyone," Rachel replied quietly. Elizabeth's smile tightened. "Don't make a scene, Rachel. The arrangements have already been made." Rather than cause a disruption, Rachel acquiesced, taking her place at the isolated table. Throughout the meal, conversation flowed around and over her. Occasionally, someone would direct a question her way, usually something condescending about her hobbies or special needs. But for the most part, she remained invisible, watching as the family she had never truly belonged to continued their performance of perfect unity. That night, alone in her room, Rachel texted Marcus. "One day down, miss you." His reply came moments later. "Tokyo meeting's going well. Should wrap up early as planned. Miss you more. Love you." Those words sustained her as she fell asleep in the impersonal room that had never felt like home. The second day of the reunion brought a schedule of family activities, a golf tournament, a luncheon, a tour of the new wing of the art museum that the Evans Foundation had helped fund. Rachel was explicitly invited only to the luncheon, with the other events deemed too difficult given your condition. During the luncheon, Rachel found herself seated between elderly great Aunt Mildred, who was hard of hearing and spoke little, and a second cousin's husband who seemed uncomfortable in her presence, uncertain how to interact with someone in a wheelchair. So, he attempted after several minutes of awkward silence. "What do you do all day? I mean, with your situation?" "I'm an artist," Rachel replied. "I create large-scale murals and installations." "Oh, like painting? That must be good therapy for you." Rachel took a slow breath. "It's not therapy, it's my profession." Right, he nodded vigorously. "Good for you, staying active." The conversation died there, his discomfort palpable. Rachel turned her attention to her meal, grateful when dessert signaled the luncheon's end. That afternoon, with the family still at the museum tour, Rachel took the opportunity to wheel through the mansion's grounds alone. She made her way to the old oak tree at the property's edge, a place she had often retreated to as a child. The tree stood as it always had, solid and enduring. Rachel reached out, touching its rough bark, remembering how she used to sketch beneath its branches, finding solace in art when human connection failed her. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Finalized the Community Art Center deal. Can't wait to tell you all about it. One more meeting tomorrow, then flying home. Love you." Rachel smiled, warmth spreading through her chest. Soon, she would leave this place of painful memories and return to the life and love she had built for herself. Marcus would join her for the final dinner, and together they would close this chapter of her life. She didn't notice Brooke approaching until her cousin's shadow fell across her wheelchair. "Hiding out here again?" Brooke asked. "Some things never change." Rachel looked up, meeting her cousin's gaze. "Just enjoying some quiet. Must be nice to skip all the obligations," Brooke remarked, her tone sharp. "While the rest of us toured that dreadfully boring museum wing, you got to relax." "I wasn't invited to the tour," Rachel pointed out. Brooke waved a dismissive hand. "Details. You always did get special treatment." The irony of this statement, equating exclusion with privilege, was so absurd that Rachel nearly laughed. Instead, she wheeled back slightly, preparing to return to the house. "The masquerade dinner is tomorrow night," Brooke continued, blocking Rachel's path. "Mother says you're actually staying for it this year. Usually you find some excuse to leave early." "I'll be there," Rachel confirmed. Something in Brooke's smile made Rachel uneasy. "Excellent. It's going to be quite an event. We have a special tradition planned." Before Rachel could ask what she meant, Brooke was already walking away, her laughter floating back on the breeze. That evening, the family gathered for an informal barbecue on the terrace. Rachel noticed that once again, the setup made it difficult for her to navigate the space. The high cocktail tables were impossible to use from her wheelchair, and the buffet was arranged on a table too tall for her to reach the serving utensils. Harold Evans, Rachel's adoptive father, approached as she struggled to serve herself, taking the plate from her hands. "Allow me," he said, his tone suggesting benevolence rather than seeing the issue with the inaccessible setup. "What would you like?" Rachel swallowed her frustration. "I can manage, thank you. If the table were lower." Now, Harold interrupted, already filling her plate with portions she hadn't requested. "No need to make demands. We're all making accommodations for you being here." The comment stung, reinforcing that her presence was seen as a burden requiring special effort rather than family including family. Harold handed her the overloaded plate with a self-satisfied smile, then rejoined a conversation with his business associates before she could respond. Throughout the evening, similar interactions occurred. Her teenage cousin asked loudly why she couldn't just stand up for a minute to join a family photo. An aunt wondered aloud whether Rachel wouldn't be more comfortable inside when the evening breeze picked up. Each comment, each thoughtless question, each pitying look chipped away at Rachel's resolve. By the time she returned to her room that night, a heaviness had settled in her chest. She video-called Marcus, needing to see his face, to be reminded of the life waiting beyond this weekend. "You look tired," he observed, his concerned face filling her phone screen. "Are they being difficult?" "No more than usual," Rachel sighed. "Just the typical thoughtlessness, nothing I haven't dealt with before." "One more day," Marcus reminded her. "I've rescheduled my flight. I'll be there for the masquerade dinner tomorrow evening." "You don't have to rush," Rachel said, though secretly she longed for his supportive presence. "I want to," Marcus said firmly. "It's time I met this family of yours. Besides, I have news about our anniversary surprise." They talked for nearly an hour, Marcus sharing details about Tokyo, Rachel carefully steering the conversation away from the reunion's difficulties. By the time they said goodnight, Rachel felt centered again, reminded that the Evans family's perception of her was not her reality. The final day of the reunion dawned bright and clear. The household buzzed with preparations for the evening's masquerade ball, decorators transforming the grand ballroom, caterers preparing elaborate displays, staff polishing silver and crystal. Rachel spent most of the day in her room, working on sketches for a new mural project, emerging only for lunch. As evening approached, she dressed carefully in the outfit she had selected, a midnight blue gown with silver accents that complemented her eyes and dark hair. The dress had been custom-made to look elegant while seated, with special attention to the neckline and sleeves that framed her shoulders beautifully. From her bag, she removed the mask she had created herself, a delicate silver filigree design embellished with small blue gemstones. As she secured it over her eyes, a text from Marcus arrived. Flight landed. We'll be there by 8:30. Can't wait to see you. Love you. With renewed confidence, Rachel made her final preparations. Tonight, for the first time, the Evans family would see her as she truly was, accomplished, loved, and whole. She placed her wedding ring on her finger, no longer hiding this symbol of her happiness. At 7 o'clock, Rachel entered the ballroom. The space had been transformed into a scene from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers casting a warm glow over tables draped in midnight blue and silver, matching the theme of celestial night. Guests in elegant attire wore masks of varying complexity, creating an atmosphere of mystery and enchantment. As Rachel wheeled into the room, she noticed the momentary pause in conversation, the subtle shift of attention. Her dress caught the light as she moved, the silver threads woven through the fabric sparkling with each motion. For once, the looks directed her way held something other than pity, perhaps surprise, perhaps even admiration. Elizabeth approached, wearing an elaborate peacock-inspired mask that covered the upper half of her face. Rachel, you look appropriate. The hesitation before the final word made it clear that beautiful had nearly escaped before being replaced with something more neutral. Thank you, Elizabeth, Rachel replied calmly. The decorations are lovely. Yes, well, Brooke supervised everything. She has such a flair for these events. Elizabeth's gaze dropped to Rachel's hand, where her wedding ring caught the light. What's that? I don't recall giving you any family jewelry. Rachel smiled. You didn't. It's mine. Before Elizabeth could inquire further, she was called away by the event planner with a question about the seating arrangement. Rachel made her way through the room, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing waiter. She checked her watch. Just over an hour until Marcus would arrive. Dinner was served at elegant round tables throughout the ballroom. Rachel found herself placed at a table with distant cousins and their spouses, people she barely knew and who showed little interest in engaging her in conversation. She ate quietly, watching the room, imagining Marcus's arrival and the ripple of surprise it would create. After the meal, the orchestra began playing, and couples moved to the dance floor. Rachel positioned her wheelchair near one of the tall windows, observing the dancing with a sense of detachment. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Traffic delay. Should be there by 9:15. Save me a dance. Rachel smiled at his humor. They had their own way of dancing that involved Marcus sitting in a regular chair, wheeling around the floor with her in synchronized movements. It was one of many creative adaptations they developed together, finding joy in reimagining rather than abandoning traditions. As the evening progressed, Rachel noticed Brooke and a group of cousins huddled together, glancing in her direction and whispering. The uneasiness she had felt at Brooke's mention of a special tradition returned, stronger now. At 9 o'clock, Harold Evans tapped a knife against his crystal glass, calling for attention. The music faded, and the dancing couples returned to their tables. Welcome, family and friends, to our annual Evans Family Reunion Masquerade. Harold's voice boomed across the ballroom. As always, this gathering celebrates our family's legacy of excellence and tradition. Polite applause followed this pronouncement. Harold continued with a lengthy speech about family accomplishments, foundation donations, and business successes. Rachel listened with half an ear, checking her watch periodically. Marcus would arrive soon. As Harold's speech concluded, Brooke stepped forward, her crimson gown dramatic against the blue decor, her mask a confection of red feathers and gold wire. Before we continue the dancing, Brooke announced, we have a special family tradition to honor. A murmur of interest rippled through the crowd. Rachel frowned. There was no special tradition at the masquerade. This was something new. The Evans family has always valued good fortune, Brooke continued, her voice carrying a note of theatrical excitement. And this year, we've decided to revive an old custom for ensuring prosperity in the coming year. Rachel felt a chill run down her spine as Brooke's gaze landed on her, a smile spreading across her cousin's face. In many ancient cultures, Brooke explained to the attentive crowd, communities would symbolically bind their troubles to a post or tree, transferring any ill fortune away from the family. Tonight, we've selected our own fortune bearer to help ensure the Evans family's continued success. With a flourish, Brooke gestured toward Rachel. As our family's most unique member, Rachel will serve as our fortune bearer. Confused applause broke out as staff members wheeled in a decorative marble column, about 5 feet tall, positioned near the center of the room. Rachel's confusion turned to dawning horror as she realized what was happening. Brooke, she said quietly as her cousin approached. What are you doing? Just having a bit of fun, Brooke replied, her voice too low for others to hear. "Don't make a scene, Rachel. It's just a silly tradition." "There is no such tradition," Rachel hissed. "You're making this up." Brooke's smile turned cold beneath her feathered mask. "Everyone's watching, Rachel. Don't embarrass yourself more than necessary." Two male cousins approached, carrying lengths of blue and silver ribbon. The crowd watched with interest, many guests clearly uncomfortable but unwilling to object to what had been presented as a family custom. "I'm not participating in this," Rachel stated firmly, beginning to wheel backward. "It's just symbolic," Brooke insisted, her voice carrying now. "For luck, don't be difficult, Rachel. For once, you can contribute something positive to this family." Rachel felt trapped. Making a scene would only confirm the family's perception of her as troublesome and ungrateful. Yet allowing this tradition would be submitting to deliberate humiliation. Before she could decide, Harold stepped forward. "Come now, Rachel. It's all in good fun. The ribbons aren't tight, just a symbolic binding to the post. You'll be the center of attention for once." The underlying cruelty of the statement, suggesting that any attention, even mockery, should be welcomed, was clear to Rachel. She looked around the room, seeking anyone who might object to this spectacle. Most guests averted their eyes, uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. "Fine," Rachel finally said, her voice steady despite the anger and hurt churning inside her. "If this is what passes for family tradition, let's get it over with." With dignity, she wheeled herself to the decorative post. The male cousins approached with the ribbons, awkwardly wrapping them around both Rachel and her wheelchair, binding her to the column. They were careful not to restrict her too tightly, but the symbolism was unmistakable. She was being put on display, tied like an offering. "There," Brooke declared once the ribbons were secured. "Now we can all enjoy good fortune in the coming year." Uncomfortable applause scattered through the room. Rachel sat immobile, her face composed despite the humiliation burning through her. The orchestra began playing again, and gradually, guests returned to dancing and conversation, though many cast uncertain glances toward Rachel. Smartphones appeared as family members took photos of the tradition, some posing beside Rachel with champagne glasses raised in mock toasts. Each flash felt like another small wound. Elizabeth approached briefly. "It will just be for 20 minutes or so," she murmured. "Try to be a good sport, Rachel." "Would you ask anyone else in the family to endure this?" Rachel asked quietly. Elizabeth's lips thinned. "No one else in this family has received the special considerations you have all these years. A little good-natured participation isn't too much to ask in return." As Elizabeth walked away, Rachel closed her eyes briefly. 20 minutes. She could endure 20 minutes of this indignity. Then Marcus would arrive, and together they would leave this place, not just for tonight but perhaps forever. The minutes crawled by. Rachel maintained her composure, refusing to show the hurt and anger that threatened to overwhelm her. She observed the party continuing around her, the dancing, the laughter, the performance of family unity that had always excluded her. 20 minutes passed, then 30. No one came to untie the ribbons. "Excuse me," Rachel called to a passing server. "Could you please ask someone to release me now?" The young man looked uncomfortable. "I'll see what I can do, ma'am." He disappeared into the crowd, but no help arrived. Rachel spotted Brooke across the room, laughing with a group of friends, occasionally gesturing in Rachel's direction. This wasn't forgetfulness. This was deliberate extended humiliation. Rachel considered freeing herself, but the ribbons had been tied in complex patterns that would be difficult to undo without assistance, especially in her position. She would only draw more attention to herself by struggling ineffectively. 45 minutes had passed since the tradition began. Rachel's dignity was being tested with each passing moment. Just as she was about to call out more forcefully for assistance, a subtle change swept through the ballroom. The music, which had been playing a lively waltz, faltered as the musicians noticed something the guests had not yet perceived. A distant sound, the rhythmic thump of helicopter blades, grew steadily louder. Conversations paused. Dancers stopped mid-step. Heads turned toward the large windows that overlooked the estate's expansive grounds. And there, illuminated by the mansion's exterior lights, a sleek black helicopter was descending onto the lawn. The helicopter's landing lights swept across the ballroom windows, casting dramatic shadows through the space. The distinctive sound of the rotors slowing filled the sudden silence that had fallen over the party. "Who on earth?" Harold Evans's voice carried across the ballroom. "Did anyone authorize a helicopter landing?" No one answered. All eyes were fixed on the windows as the aircraft settled gracefully onto the manicured lawn. Even from a distance, it was clearly no ordinary helicopter. Its sleek design and custom paint job suggested significant wealth and status. Rachel felt her heart quicken. She knew that helicopter. She had flown in it many times, seated beside Marcus as they traveled to remote locations for art installations or business meetings. A small smile played at her lips beneath her silver mask. The guests crowded toward the windows, champagne glasses forgotten in hand. masks slightly askew as they craned for a better view. Through the parting crowd, Rachel could see the helicopter door open and a tall figure emerge. Marcus Lee stepped onto the lawn, impeccably dressed in a tailored black suit. Even without a mask, he looked like he belonged at the masquerade, his natural elegance and commanding presence drawing all eyes to him. He spoke briefly to the pilot, then turned toward the mansion with purposeful strides. "Security," Harold called, his voice pitched higher than usual. "Someone find out who this intruder is." But the household staff seemed frozen, uncertain how to respond to this unexpected arrival. Within moments, the sound of voices in the foyer indicated that Marcus had already entered the building. The ballroom doors swung open. Marcus Lee stood framed in the doorway, his dark eyes scanning the room with cool assessment. He carried no mask, his handsome face fully visible as he took in the scene before him, the masked guests, the elaborate decorations, and finally, Rachel tied to the decorative column. A flash of something dangerous crossed his features when he saw her bound to the post, but it was quickly replaced by perfect composure. Without speaking, he crossed the ballroom floor with measured steps. The crowd parted instinctively before him, sensing the barely contained power in his deliberate movements. No one spoke as he approached Rachel, though whispers began rippling through the room. "Isn't that, it can't be, Marcus Lee, the tech billionaire?" Marcus stopped directly in front of Rachel, his eyes softening as they met hers. "I'm sorry I'm late," he said simply, his voice carrying in the hushed room. "You're right on time," Rachel replied, her smile genuine now. With meticulous care, Marcus began untying the ribbons binding Rachel to the post. His fingers worked efficiently, respectfully, never rushing but making quick work of the elaborate knots. As the last ribbon fell away, he knelt beside her wheelchair, taking her hand in his. "Are you all right?" he asked quietly. "I am now," she answered. He rose to his full height, turning to face the stunned crowd, his hand remaining on Rachel's shoulder, a gesture of both protection and partnership. "Good evening," he addressed the room with calm authority. "I apologize for the dramatic entrance. I'm Marcus Lee, Rachel's husband." The word husband triggered an audible gasp from several guests. Elizabeth Evans stepped forward, her peacock mask now clutched in her hand, her expression a mixture of confusion and calculation. "Husband?" she repeated. "Rachel isn't married." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "We celebrated our 3rd anniversary last month." His statement hung in the air, highlighting how little this family knew about Rachel's actual life. Brooke pushed through the crowd, her red feathered mask askew. "You can't be Marcus Lee," she challenged, though her voice held a note of uncertainty. "The Marcus Lee, founder of Accessible Innovations?" "The same," Marcus confirmed with a slight nod. "And you are?" "Brooke Evans," she answered automatically, momentarily forgetting her hostility in the presence of his celebrity. "Rachel's cousin." "Ah," Marcus said, his gaze cooling. "The architect of tonight's tradition?" Brooke flushed beneath her mask. "It was just a bit of fun, a family custom." "Is it your family's custom to publicly humiliate and restrain a guest of honor?" Marcus's question was delivered with such polite interest that it took a moment for the scathing criticism beneath to register. Harold Evans stepped forward, attempting to salvage the situation. "Now see here, Mr. Lee, if that's who you really are. You've interrupted a private family gathering and made accusations about—" "I've interrupted the public degradation of my wife," Marcus corrected smoothly. "And as for who I really am," he removed his phone from his pocket, tapped the screen, and immediately, the large decorative screens that had been displaying family photos throughout the evening flickered to life with a different image. The screens now showed a Forbes magazine cover featuring Marcus's face above the headline, "The billion-dollar visionary reshaping accessible technology." A stunned silence fell over the room. "Now," Marcus continued, replacing his phone in his pocket, "I believe Rachel and I will be leaving. We have an anniversary to celebrate." Elizabeth rushed forward, her social instincts overriding her shock. "Mr. Lee, surely there's no need to depart so hastily. There's been a misunderstanding. Rachel is a beloved member of our family." "Is she?" Marcus interrupted, his voice maintaining its pleasant tone though his eyes had hardened. "From what I've observed this evening, and from what Rachel has shared about her 20 years in your household, beloved is not the word I would choose." Harold puffed up indignantly. "Now see here, young man, we took Rachel in when no one else would. We've provided for her, educated her, included her in our family events." "Included her?" Marcus raised an eyebrow, glancing meaningfully at the ribbons now scattered on the floor. "Is that what you call this spectacle?" "It was a harmless tradition," Brooke insisted, though her voice had lost its earlier confidence. "Let me be clear," Marcus said, addressing the entire room now. "What I witnessed upon my arrival was not a tradition. It was deliberate humiliation, and I suspect it's merely the latest in a long pattern of such behavior." Rachel placed her hand on Marcus's arm. "It's all right," she said quietly. "Let's just go." Marcus covered her hand with his own but continued addressing the Evans family. Rachel has shown remarkable grace in how she speaks of you all. Despite years of condescension, exclusion, and emotional neglect, she has never spoken of you with hatred. That grace speaks to her character, not yours. The accusation hung in the air, impossible to deny given the evidence of the evening's tradition. Harold's face had reddened, while Elizabeth's had gone pale. Brooke looked away, unable to meet anyone's eyes. Before we leave, Marcus continued, his tone shifting to something more businesslike. There's another matter I should address. He removed a folded document from his inner suit pocket. I recently acquired a controlling interest in Evans Development Holdings. Harold's jaw dropped. That's impossible. Evans Development is a private family corporation. The shares are held exclusively by various banks and creditors to whom you've been steadily losing them over the past decade. Marcus finished for him. Yes, I'm aware. My financial team has been tracking the Evans family's business decline for some time. When we learned that the final shares were being liquidated to cover mounting debts, we made an offer that the creditors found irresistible. The blood drained from Harold's face. You can't do this. The Evans estate is now under new ownership, Marcus confirmed. The paperwork was finalized yesterday. Don't worry, though. You won't be evicted immediately. We have plans for this property that will take some time to implement. Plans? Elizabeth echoed faintly. What sort of plans? Marcus smiled, turning to Rachel. Would you like to tell them, or shall I? Rachel straightened in her wheelchair, finding her voice. The Evans estate will be converted into the Evans Inclusive Arts Center, a fully accessible community space dedicated to artists with disabilities. The mansion will house galleries, studios, and classrooms designed to be truly accessible to all bodies. The shocked silence that followed was broken only by a strangled sound from Harold. You're turning our home into a charity center? Brooke finally managed. Not charity, Rachel corrected firmly. A professional arts organization that will provide education, exhibition space, and career development for artists who have been systematically excluded from traditional institutions. And it will be dedicated to the memory of Jonathan and Marie Wells, my parents. For the first time in 20 years, Rachel spoke her biological parents' names in the Evans household. The simple act felt liberating, as if their spirits had finally been invited into this space that had never acknowledged them. This is outrageous, Harold blustered, though his voice lacked conviction. You can't just— Actually, we can, and we have, Marcus said calmly. The financial documents reveal that the Evans family has been insolvent for nearly 5 years, maintaining appearances while steadily selling off assets. The only thing actually keeping this mansion from foreclosure was the annual injection of foundation funds, which, I believe, was technically misappropriation. Harold paled further at this accurate assessment of the family's precarious financial situation, information they had successfully hidden from their social circle until now. You'll be hearing from our lawyers, he threatened weakly. I look forward to it, Marcus replied with perfect equanimity. My legal team has already prepared extensive documentation regarding the Evans family's financial improprieties over the past decade. I imagine the foundation board and your donors would find it fascinating reading. The implicit threat hung in the air. Harold's shoulders sagged slightly as he recognized the checkmate. Rachel, who had been quietly observing this exchange, now spoke up. We didn't come here tonight for retribution, though it might seem that way. We came because I wanted to finally bridge two parts of my life that I've kept separate for too long. She wheeled forward slightly, addressing the family directly. For 20 years, I've lived in two worlds. In one, I was the pitied relation, the burden, the afterthought. In the other, I was a respected artist, a cherished wife, a woman of accomplishment and worth. I wanted to believe those worlds could somehow reconcile, that you might finally see me as I truly am. Her gaze swept across the faces of the Evans family. Elizabeth's tight-lipped calculation, Harold's defeated anger, Brooke's humiliated avoidance. What happened tonight has made it clear that reconciliation isn't possible, Rachel continued, her voice steady. You chose to see the wheelchair rather than the person. You chose mockery over respect, and in doing so, you've revealed far more about yourselves than about me. A heavy silence followed her words. For once, no one in the Evans family had a ready response. Marcus placed his hand gently on Rachel's shoulder. Our helicopter is waiting, he said softly. Rachel nodded, then addressed the room one final time. The Evans Inclusive Arts Center will open in approximately 1 year. You'll all receive invitations to the grand opening. I hope by then, some of you might have reflected on what true family means. She turned her wheelchair away from the crowd, toward the ballroom doors. Marcus walked beside her, matching her pace exactly, neither ahead nor behind, equals moving in perfect harmony. As they reached the doors, Elizabeth rushed forward. Rachel, wait, she called, her voice tinged with desperation. You can't just leave like this. We're your family. Rachel paused, turning back to face her adoptive mother. "No, Elizabeth. You were my guardians, my caretakers, but never my family. Family sees you, values you, loves you as you are. I found that elsewhere." With those words, Rachel and Marcus exited the ballroom, leaving behind a stunned silence and a room full of masked faces suddenly stripped of their pretenses. Outside, the night air felt fresh and liberating after the stuffy atmosphere of the ballroom. The helicopter waited on the lawn, its presence as dramatic and unexpected as the revelations that had just unfolded inside. As they approached the aircraft, Rachel looked up at Marcus. "That was quite an entrance." He smiled, a touch of mischief in his eyes. "I considered something more subtle, but when I saw you tied to that post," his expression darkened momentarily. Subtlety no longer seemed appropriate. Rachel reached for his hand. "Thank you for coming when you did." "I'll always come for you," he said simply. "But I'm sorry you had to endure that tradition at all." The pilot helped secure Rachel's wheelchair in the specially designed compartment of the helicopter, then assisted her transfer to the passenger seat. As Marcus settled beside her, she removed her silver mask, feeling as though she was shedding more than just an accessory. "Where to?" Marcus asked as the pilot prepared for takeoff. Rachel smiled. "You mentioned an anniversary surprise. Something about the riverfront property?" Marcus's eyes lit up. "I thought you might want to see it tonight. The architectural team sent over the preliminary designs yesterday. They've incorporated all your accessibility specifications." As the helicopter lifted into the night sky, Rachel looked back at the Evans mansion growing smaller below them. The grand house with its columns and manicured gardens had never really been her home. Now it would become something more meaningful, a space transformed by her vision, dedicated to inclusion rather than exclusion. "You know," Marcus said thoughtfully as they gained altitude, "your cousin Brooke was right about one thing." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" "There is an ancient tradition of binding negative energy to a post to transfer it away from a community." His eyes held hers with warm intensity. "By tying you to that post, they unknowingly released you from them. Sometimes the universe has a sense of irony." Rachel laughed softly. "I like that interpretation. Out with the old, in with the new." As the helicopter turned toward the riverfront, leaving the Evans estate behind, Rachel felt a profound sense of closure. The chapter of her life defined by others' limitations was ending. Ahead lay a future she would design herself, accessible, inclusive, and authentically her own. "Happy anniversary, Rachel," Marcus said, taking her hand. "Happy new beginning," she replied, squeezing his fingers as the city lights spread out beneath them like stars fallen to earth, full of possibility. The riverfront property looked different at night than it had in the daylight hours when Rachel had first spotted its potential. Floodlights had been set up around the perimeter, illuminating the 5-acre lot that stretched from the water's edge to the main road. The abandoned warehouse that had occupied the space for decades had already been demolished, leaving a clean slate for their vision. Marcus helped Rachel transfer to her wheelchair as the helicopter settled on the temporary landing pad at the edge of the property. Despite the lateness of the hour, a small group waited for them. The architectural team Marcus had assembled for the project. "I hope you don't mind a working anniversary celebration," Marcus said as they approached the waiting group. "They're excited to show you the models." Rachel smiled. "After tonight, seeing our future plans is exactly what I need." The lead architect, Sophia Wang, greeted them warmly. "We've set up in the trailer office," she explained, leading the way along a smoothly paved temporary path. Rachel noted appreciatively that accessibility had been considered even for this temporary setup. Inside the well-lit trailer, a large model occupied the center table. Rachel gasped softly as she took in the miniature representation of what would become the Evans Inclusive Arts Center. The design was stunning, a harmonious blend of the original mansion's Greek Revival elements with modern, accessible features. The front steps had been replaced with a gently sloping pathway that curved organically through gardens. Glass-walled studios allowed natural light to flood workspaces while making the creative process visible to visitors. The ballroom where Rachel had been humiliated was transformed into a gallery with adjustable lighting and flexible display options. "This is incredible," Rachel breathed, wheeling around the table to view the model from all angles. "You've incorporated everything we discussed, and a few additional features," Sophia said, pointing to various elements. "Here, the sensory garden with plants selected for fragrance and texture. This section will have tactile floor indicators for visitors with visual impairments. And we've designed the classrooms with adjustable tables and equipment that can be used from any height." Rachel felt tears welling in her eyes. "It's everything I imagined, but better." Marcus stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on her shoulder. "There's one more element we added today." He nodded to Sophia, who revealed a small covered section of the model. When she removed the cover, Rachel saw a bronze sculpture in the center courtyard, a miniature representation of two figures. Looking closer, she recognized the forms, a woman in a wheelchair and a standing man, reaching toward each other. their fingers touching in a gesture reminiscent of Michelangelo's creation of Adam. The Wells Lee Memorial, Sophia explained, dedicated to your parents, but also symbolizing the connection between all human beings, regardless of ability. Rachel couldn't speak, overcome with emotion. Marcus knelt beside her wheelchair. Is it too much? He asked softly. We can change it if... It's perfect, Rachel managed, taking his hand. Absolutely perfect. The remainder of the night was spent in detailed discussion of the center's features, the accessibility considerations, the educational programs Rachel envisioned, the residence halls for visiting artists. It was after midnight when they finally thanked the architectural team and returned to the helicopter. Some anniversary celebration, Marcus remarked as they lifted off. Architectural meetings and family confrontations. Rachel laughed, the sound lighter than it had been in days. Actually, it was exactly what I needed. Seeing the future we're building helps put the past in perspective. As they flew home, Rachel nestled against Marcus's shoulder, exhaustion finally catching up with her. I should feel upset about what happened tonight, she murmured. But mostly I feel free. Sometimes, Marcus said thoughtfully, the worst moment becomes the turning point, like a catharsis. Rachel nodded against his shoulder. I've spent 20 years trying to earn the Evans family's respect, trying to make them see me. Tonight I realized I don't need their validation. I never did. When they arrived home, Marcus carried Rachel from the helicopter to their bedroom, despite her insistence that she could transfer to her wheelchair. Indulge me, he said with a smile. It's our anniversary. Later, as they lay together in the quiet darkness of their room, Rachel found herself thinking about legacy, what we leave behind, what we carry forward. I want to adopt, she said suddenly, the thought crystallizing in her mind. Marcus propped himself up on one elbow, looking at her in the dim light. A child? Rachel nodded. A child with disabilities, someone who needs a family that will see them, value them, love them exactly as they are. Marcus's eyes softened. I think that's a wonderful idea. Really? Really, he confirmed, taking her hand. We have so much to give, not just materially, but emotionally. And who better to raise a child with physical challenges than someone who understands that experience firsthand? They fell asleep making plans, not just for the art center, but for their growing family, for the legacy they would build together. The following weeks brought a flurry of activity. The Evans family, true to form, attempted to contest the sale of their ancestral home through legal channels, but Marcus's legal team had anticipated every challenge. The financial records revealed a pattern of mismanagement and impropriety that the Evans family could not afford to have made public. Within a month, they quietly withdrew their objections. Rachel channeled her energy into both the art center plans and the adoption process. She and Marcus worked with an agency specializing in placing children with special needs, beginning the lengthy journey toward parenthood. 3 months after the masquerade ball incident, Rachel received an unexpected visitor at her studio. Her assistant announced that Ms. Brooke Evans was asking to see her. Rachel hesitated, then nodded. Send her in. Brooke entered tentatively, a far cry from the confident, cruel woman of the reunion. She carried a small gift bag and looked uncharacteristically subdued. Thank you for seeing me, she began, hovering uncertainly near the door. Have a seat, Rachel offered, gesturing to the chair opposite her desk. Brooke sat, placing the gift bag on the edge of the desk. I've been trying to work up the courage to call you since that night. Rachel said nothing, waiting. I brought this, Brooke continued, pushing the gift bag forward. It's not much, but Rachel opened the bag and removed a small framed photograph. It showed 2 young girls, one standing, one in a child-sized wheelchair, both smiling at the camera, their arms around each other. Rachel recognized herself and Brooke at perhaps 7 and 9 years old, shortly after she had come to live with the Evans family. I found it when we were packing up the house, Brooke explained. I'd forgotten that we were actually friends once. Rachel studied the photograph, remembering. You used to sneak into my room with cookies after your mother told you not to bother me. Brooke nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. I don't know when or why I changed. When I started seeing you differently. I do, Rachel said quietly. It was the summer you turned 12. Elizabeth told you that your friendship with me might make other girls hesitant to befriend you. She suggested you'd be more popular if you distanced yourself. Brooke's shock was evident. How did you? I overheard her. I was coming to show you a drawing I'd made for your birthday. Silence fell between them, heavy with the weight of childhood wounds and adult realizations. I'm not here to ask forgiveness, Brooke finally said. What I did at the reunion was cruel and inexcusable. And it wasn't just that night. It was years of treating you as less than. I have no right to expect your forgiveness. Then why are you here? Rachel asked, her tone neutral. Brooke took a deep breath, to acknowledge the harm I've done, to say I'm sorry for my part in it, and, she hesitated, to ask if there might be any way I could help with the art center. Not as family, not as a friend, but as someone trying to make amends through actions. not just words. Rachel studied her cousin thoughtfully. The apology seemed genuine, free from the Evans family's usual calculations and manipulations. "The center will need volunteers," she said finally. "People to assist with classes, to help make the space welcoming to all visitors. It's not glamorous work." "I don't expect glamour," Brooke replied. "I just want to do something meaningful, to learn how to see people, really see them." Rachel nodded slowly. "Come to the volunteer orientation next month. We'll start there." It wasn't forgiveness, exactly. It was an opportunity for Brooke to grow, for Rachel to practice the inclusion she preached, for wounds to begin healing through constructive action rather than hollow words. As the months passed, other family members made similar overtures, some sincere, others transparently self-serving. Rachel welcomed the genuine attempts at amends while gently but firmly rebuffing those who sought only to associate themselves with what was becoming a prestigious project. The Evans Inclusive Arts Center was generating significant positive press as construction progressed. Rachel's vision of a truly accessible creative space was resonating with artists, educators, and community leaders nationwide. Several major foundations had contributed additional funding, impressed by the comprehensive approach to inclusion. Meanwhile, Rachel and Marcus's adoption journey progressed. 6 months after beginning the process, they received a call about a 9-year-old girl named Lily. Born with spina bifida, she had been in foster care since age 4 when her birth parents, overwhelmed by medical challenges, had surrendered their parental rights. The first meeting with Lily was tentative but promising. The child was understandably reserved, having experienced multiple placement failures. But when Rachel showed her sketches from a children's book she was illustrating, Lily's face lit up. "You can draw really good," she said, examining the drawings with serious attention. "I like to draw too, but not as good as you. I could teach you some techniques," Rachel offered. Lily looked up, her expression cautiously hopeful. "If I came to live with you guys, would I have my own art supplies?" "Absolutely," Marcus answered. "Your own art supplies, your own books, your own space to create. And my wheelchair wouldn't be a problem?" Lily asked directly. "The last family said it made things too complicated." Rachel reached out slowly, offering her hand to Lily. "In our home, wheelchairs are never a problem. They're just how some of us move through the world." Lily took Rachel's hand, a small smile forming. "Can I think about it?" "Of course," Rachel assured her. "This is a big decision. We want you to be sure." It took 3 more visits, but eventually Lily decided she wanted to become part of their family. The day she moved in, with her modest collection of belongings, her well-worn wheelchair, and her prized sketchbook, the house truly became a home. As the 1-year anniversary of the Masquerade Ball approached, the Evans Inclusive Arts Center neared completion. Rachel had overseen every detail, from the height of light switches to the texture of flooring materials, ensuring the space would be truly welcoming to all bodies. The grand opening was scheduled for exactly 1 year after the night she had been tied to the post, a deliberate choice that transformed a humiliating memory into a triumphant milestone. The invitations to the opening gala were sent to artists, community leaders, donors, disability advocates, and to the entire Evans family. Some responded with immediate acceptances, others with polite declinations. Elizabeth and Harold, now living in a much smaller home in another state, did not respond at all. Brooke, however, had become a regular volunteer during the center's development. Her initially awkward attempts at amends had gradually evolved into genuine appreciation for the work and the mission. She had even begun taking classes in American Sign Language to better communicate with deaf artists who would be using the space. The night of the opening gala arrived. The transformed Evans mansion gleamed with lights, its new accessible entryways and ramps integrated so seamlessly into the landscape design that they seemed to have always been part of the architecture. Inside, the former formal living room had become a welcome center with adjustable height information desks and tactile maps of the building. The dining room was now a cafe with tables accommodating wheelchairs and service animals, and the ballroom, the site of Rachel's humiliation, was now a stunning gallery showcasing works by disabled artists from around the world. Rachel, dressed in an elegant emerald gown, greeted guests alongside Marcus. Lily, officially their daughter as of 3 weeks earlier, helped distribute programs, proudly wearing a Junior Arts Ambassador badge. The ceremony began with Marcus welcoming the gathered crowd, acknowledging donors and community partners. Then he introduced Rachel, who wheeled to the center of the gallery as applause filled the room. "1 year ago today, I sat bound to a decorative post in this very room," Rachel began, her voice strong and clear. "It was meant to be an act of humiliation, a reminder that I was different, less than, unwelcome." A hush fell over the crowd. "But something unexpected came from that moment," Rachel continued. "It became the catalyst for transformation, not just of this building, but of relationships, perspectives, and possibilities." She gestured to the space around them. This center is not a rejection of the past, but a redemption of it. We've taken a space designed to exclude and reimagined it as a place where everyone belongs. The very post I was tied to has been repurposed as the base for the sculpture in our courtyard, a symbol that what was meant to harm can be transformed into something beautiful. Nods and murmurs of appreciation rippled through the audience. The Evans Inclusive Arts Center is dedicated to my parents, Jonathan and Marie Wells, who taught me that art belongs to everyone, but it also honors every person who has ever felt excluded, overlooked, or unwelcome. This is your space now. These are your walls to fill with color and light and truth. Rachel paused, her gaze finding Lily in the crowd. And most importantly, this center exists for the next generation, for young artists like my daughter, who deserve a world that sees their gifts rather than their limitations. The crowd erupted in applause. As it subsided, Rachel noticed Elizabeth and Harold Evans standing at the back of the gallery. They had come, after all, though they remained distant, observer rather than participants. After the formal speeches, as guests explored the center, Rachel found herself face to face with Elizabeth in a quiet corner of the gallery. "This is impressive," Elizabeth said stiffly. "You've done well for yourself." "Thank you," Rachel replied simply. An uncomfortable silence stretched between them. Finally, Elizabeth spoke again. "I don't expect you to understand, but we did what we thought was best for you." Rachel considered this. "Perhaps you did, but your best involved making me invisible, Elizabeth. It involved teaching me that my worth was tied to my utility, my acceptability, my ability to not inconvenience others with my needs." Elizabeth flinched slightly. "That wasn't our intention. Intentions matter less than impact," Rachel said quietly. "The impact of your parenting was that I spent 20 years believing I was fundamentally less valuable than an able-bodied person. That's what I had to unlearn when I met Marcus. Not just how to be loved, but how to believe I deserved that love." Elizabeth had no response to this, her usual composure faltering. "I don't hate you," Rachel continued. "I don't even blame you anymore. You were operating from your own limitations, your fear of difference, your attachment to appearances, your narrow definition of what makes a life valuable. I've moved beyond needing your approval or understanding." With that, Rachel wheeled away, returning to the celebration. She found Marcus and Lily near the interactive art installation that formed the centerpiece of the children's studio. "Everything okay?" Marcus asked, noting her expression. Rachel smiled, watching Lily excitedly showing another child how the installation worked. "Everything is exactly as it should be." As the evening progressed, Rachel observed the diverse crowd with satisfaction. Artists using prosthetics demonstrated techniques to fascinated observers. Deaf poets performed in sign language with interpreters translating. Children in wheelchairs explored tactile art stations alongside their able-bodied peers. The center was already fulfilling its purpose, creating a space where art was accessible to all, where creativity transcended physical limitations. Later that night, after the guests had departed and Lily was asleep, Rachel and Marcus stood in what had been the Evans family ballroom, now transformed into the main gallery. "Full circle," Marcus observed, looking at the space where the decorative post had once stood. Rachel nodded. "From exclusion to inclusion, from invisibility to recognition. Are you okay with how things ended with your adoptive family?" Marcus asked. Rachel considered this thoughtfully. "I think so. Some relationships can't be repaired. They can only be acknowledged and released. Elizabeth and Harold will never truly understand what they did or why it was harmful. And that's okay. I don't need their understanding to be whole." She looked around the gallery, at the artwork created by artists whose bodies and minds worked differently from the standardized norm. Each piece told a story of perspective, of resilience, of seeing the world through a unique lens. "What matters is this," she said, gesturing to the space around them, "creating something meaningful from the experience, building a legacy that might prevent other children from feeling as I did." Marcus wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "You've transformed pain into purpose. That's not just healing, it's alchemy." The next morning, Rachel led her first official class in the center's main studio. Students of various ages and abilities gathered around tables designed to accommodate wheelchairs, standing frames, and adaptive equipment. Brooke assisted, helping distribute materials and supporting students who needed extra hands. Lily sat proudly in the front row, her sketchbook open and ready. "Welcome to our first workshop," Rachel began, surveying the eager faces before her. "Today we'll be exploring self-portraiture, not just how we appear physically, but how we experience ourselves in the world." She wheeled to each table, making personal connections with students, noting their unique approaches to the materials. When everyone was settled, she returned to the front of the room. "Before we begin drawing, I want to share something with you," Rachel said. "Each of us comes to this space with different bodies, different minds, different ways of moving through the world. Those differences aren't deficiencies, they're perspectives, valuable, unique perspectives that enhance our collective understanding of what it means to be human. She paused, looking at Lily, who was listening with complete attention. Your strength isn't defined by how others see you, Rachel continued, her voice carrying through the sun-filled studio, but by how clearly you see yourselves. Today, we begin learning to see clearly, to recognize our own worth, our own beauty, our own essential contribution to the world. As the students began to draw, Rachel moved among them, offering guidance and encouragement. When she reached Lily's table, her daughter looked up with bright eyes. "Mom," Lily whispered, "I'm really glad you got tied to that post." Rachel raised her eyebrows in surprise. "You are?" Lily nodded solemnly. "Because if you hadn't, maybe this place wouldn't exist, and maybe you wouldn't have adopted me. So even though it was mean, it turned into something good." Rachel touched her daughter's cheek gently. "That's a very wise observation, Lily. Sometimes life works exactly that way. The most painful moments can lead to the most beautiful transformations." Outside the studio windows, sunlight streamed across the courtyard where the new sculpture stood, the figures reaching toward each other, connecting across difference, their bronze surfaces catching the light like a beacon of possibility. If you enjoyed this narrative of resilience and redemption, you might appreciate our other stories of transformation and justice. The link to our full collection appears at the end of this video. Each tale offers a unique perspective on overcoming adversity and finding strength in unexpected places. 1 year after opening, the Evans Inclusive Arts Center welcomed its 1,000th student. The waiting list for classes grew longer each month, and satellite programs began developing in neighboring communities. Lily, now 10, had begun creating her own comic book series featuring superheroes who used wheelchairs, prosthetics, and other adaptive equipment. "Heroes come in all bodies," she explained to visitors touring the center. Rachel and Marcus continued expanding their vision, developing accessible arts programming for communities throughout the country. Rachel's murals adorned public buildings in major cities, each one celebrating human diversity and resilience. The decorative post that once symbolized Rachel's humiliation had been completely transformed, now the base of a sculpture representing connection across difference, a reminder that what binds us can become what lifts us. In the end, Rachel's greatest legacy wasn't the art center, impressive as it was. Her legacy lived in the changed perspectives of those who passed through its doors, in children who grew up seeing disability as simply another way of being human, in artists who found their voice when other spaces had silenced them, and yes, even in family members who slowly learned to see beyond their own limitations. Because ultimately, the most beautiful transformations happen not in buildings but in hearts, where exclusion gives way to belonging, invisibility to recognition, and pain to purpose. Thank you for joining us for this journey of dignity and resilience. Until next time.